Why the hell do I suddenly have an Irish accent? I rolled over and asked Nathan if he wanted any coffee, but he started choking with laughter and almost fell off our bed. It hit me. Every word had this thick Irish lilt, and my frustration lit up, sharp and hot. I tried switching back to my regular American voice. All I got was some cartoon leprechaun nonsense, straight out of a bad movie. Nathan just shook his head and told me to quit joking around, but my real voice was gone, locked behind this weird brogue. When I focused hard enough, little veins popping in my forehead, I could kind of manage a sloppy American accent, but it sounded like an Irish lady struggling with her vowels. Nathan had to lie to my job and claim I'd lost my voice. There was no way I was explaining this. The doctor said it might be foreign accent syndrome, some rare thing that happens after trauma or mini strokes, and sent me in for an urgent MRI. I sat there as the neurologist read the scan. No stroke, no tumor, totally clear. Nathan started to ice me out after 3 days of me calling in sick, sighing every time he passed by. Dr. Marquez, my new neurologist, decided it could all be psychogenic and sent me to a conversion disorder specialist. 6 weeks on anxiety meds and nothing changed. Nathan kept harping that I just loved the attention, hinting I was faking the pills. Then Paula, ever the armchair detective, said, maybe I got hypnotized at that comedy show last week. We called the venue. Management swore up and down that nobody was messing with people's voices. Nathan packed his stuff and started sleeping in the guest room, muttering that even he couldn't keep up with my bit. Dr. Tanya Singh, my speech pathologist, guessed maybe I was echoing some long-buried Irish exposure as a kid. My dad found old camcorder tapes. There I was at 3, all Midwest vowels. No Irish, no mysterious nanny. After that, he stopped inviting me to dinner, blaming my fake accent for putting the whole family on edge. Our delivery driver Hugo was the first to get really weird about it. He actually suggested I go get tested for carbon monoxide poisoning because, apparently, that sometimes causes freaky neurological problems. The fire department marched in, poked around the basement, waved their meter thing, and finally told me the CO levels were totally normal. The inspector even said, dead serious, that he'd never heard of someone waking up with a thick Irish brogue from carbon monoxide, for God's sake. Meanwhile, Sakura Imports, my one client with that government-only contract, started threatening to bail because they needed US-born reps, and now I sounded like I'd just staggered out of a pub in Dublin. Speech therapy was next. Dr. Tanya Singh actually raised an eyebrow at me the first day and said something flat-out bizarre was going on. This wasn't just me faking an Irish accent, I was dropping Irish slang and weird grammar I'd never even learned. Suddenly I was using whilst instead of while, and spelling color with a U on emails, catching myself and then forgetting again. Eventually, Dr. Singh hit a wall, and Paula straight up accused me of faking the whole thing. She said I was just pulling some kind of stunt. Then it hit me. I'd had dental work literally days before all this exploded. Maybe the anesthetic had messed up a nerve, right? Dr. Park, my dentist, looked insulted and swore he'd only used the most basic anesthetic. No way it could rewrite my entire voice. Things at home got ugly. Nathan started leaving open apartment listings on his laptop, not even acting subtle about it anymore. Dr. Ishan Patel at Mayo Clinic was next. He said maybe it was some ultra-rare autoimmune thing frying my speech centers. They must have taken gallons of my blood to hunt for sneaky antibodies ripping up my brain's language circuits. Every single test came back negative. Absolutely nothing. Not a blip. The day Sakura Imports actually dropped our company and I got fired, Nathan told me he couldn't stay married to someone still committed to a lie, even if it meant losing everything. My sister, never one to quit, found an article about people catching foreign accents after vicious allergic reactions. So I got allergy tested for every single thing you could imagine. None of them flagged anything weird, just more negatives and more wasted time. The allergist rolled his eyes at the very end and declared that food allergies just flat out don't work like that. Not in this universe. Nathan filed for separation, claiming he needed a partner he could actually trust. In impulsive desperation, we tried everything. Acupuncture, Lyme tests, even ruled out brain parasites. And I barely hid my disbelief. Dr. Tanya Singh floated the idea of multiple personality disorder with a thick Irish brogue as the alternate. But ironically, the psych eval shut that theory down hard. Every half-baked medical theory crumbled. And there I was. I'd lost my job, my husband, and was still talking like I'd grown up in rural County Cork. Dr. Tanya Singh, the speech pathologist who was obsessing over my weird case, rang me up 6 months later after digging into crusty medical journals from the 60s. I could hear her excitement as she described finding 3 spotless cases just like mine, American patients randomly waking up with Irish accents and zero medical explanation. Dr. Tanya Singh had even tracked down one of the ancient doctors involved in those cases. The two of us drove 3 hours in my battered car to meet Dr. Elias Rocha, who clocked in at 92 but still had a sharp as hell mind. Dr. Rocha grabbed my wrist after hearing me talk, eyeing me like I was some haunted pub ghost. He asked me to spit out the word schedule, and when my Irish version rolled out, he just shook his head and muttered, not another one. Dr. Tanya Singh asked what his deal was while he glanced around like the room was bugged, then fished an ancient notebook out of his bedside drawer. He flipped through those yellowed, grimy pages until something caught his eye, then turned the notebook toward me to finally reveal 4 words he claimed explained everything. Those 4 faded blue words glared back at me. Functional neurological disorder syndrome. Dr. Rocha's fingers trembled as he pointed, slow and steady, to each cursed word. He then tugged out another wrinkled, handwritten page from decades ago that was nearly falling apart. Dr. Tanya Singh leaned over my shoulder, hungry to see, while Dr. Rocha started breaking down what those 4 words really meant back in the day. With sardonic flair, I processed his explanation. The brain can jack up your real-life symptoms without leaving a single scratch on your hardware. I watched Dr. Tanya Singh grab her notepad and jot down everything Dr. Elias Rocha said, her pen moving faster with every sassy interruption from me. Dr. Elias Rocha flipped through more pages to reveal case notes from 3 different patients he'd handled, his voice thick with a kind of pulp energy. Each one had abruptly developed a thick Irish brogue, just like what happened to me, emphasizing the sheer absurdity of it all. He dragged his finger along the messy scrawl, pointing out how all 3 cases kicked off after some hellish stress. One unlucky dude had just lost his entire business and was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Another patient had gone through a disastrous divorce while coping with her own mother's death, a vividly cynical mess. The third was working a soul-sucking 80-hour work week to try and fail to patch up a doomed marriage. Dr. Rocha explained explained their brains had latched onto this out-of-nowhere Irish accent as some twisted way to dodge the pressure. Dr. Tanya Singh asked him to lay out the pattern he'd been talking about, her eyebrow arching higher. He flipped to a scrappy chart tracking how each patient's accent drama played out over months and years. 2 of the patients never recovered their American accents, no matter how many treatments or half-baked tricks they tried. The 3rd patient clawed back a little improvement after 3 relentless years, but only after she quit the fight and just rolled with the accent. I felt my stomach drop as I stared at those charts, seeing the years of stubborn, unchanged Irish brogue right there in black and white. Dr. Rocha locked eyes with me and pointed out that those who fought the hardest seemed to sink even deeper into accent hell, like struggling in quicksand. We slogged through another hour, combing through old notes, while Dr. Rocha dished out every odd detail he could fetch from his memory. Dr. Tanya Singh snapped photos of every page with her phone for later, her fingers flying with almost reckless energy. When we finally got up to go, Dr. Rocha grabbed my arm and tossed out a sarcastic wish that I'd get better luck than his hopeless cases. The return drive felt endlessly long to me, my mind weighed down with all this new info that did nothing to lighten my cynical load. Dr. Tanya Singh kept glancing at me as she drove, barely saying anything at first. About halfway home, she finally started in on how FND is now considered a legit neurological thing. She said doctors today actually understand it way better than people did back in the 60s. Dr. Singh explained that sometimes the brain's software glitches, even when the hardware looks fine on all the scans. She compared my speech to my brain suddenly downloading an Irish language pack and deleting the American one during a moment of stress. That explanation clicked for me, but it also made me queasy because, wow, this was real. Over the next few days, I kept replaying what she'd said about those 3 patients from the 60s. The thought haunted me. I could get stuck like this for years, just like those people. Dr. Singh called to check on me, and she picked up on my anxiety the second I said hello. She said she'd spent all night deep diving FND and had found someone new who might help. She explained there was a woman named Li Ming Chen at the university who specialized in language symptoms with brain disorders. Dr. Singh had already reached out to Li Ming and filled her in about me. Li Ming wanted to meet as soon as possible and properly document the situation. I agreed in a heartbeat because I needed someone willing to actually believe me. 3 days later, Li Ming Chen knocked on my door with 2 giant cases of equipment. She set up microphones and cameras all over my living room. The place looked like a wannabe podcast studio in 5 minutes flat. Then, for 3 hours straight, Li Ming had me reading random passages and listing words she handed me on note cards. She recorded me repeating the same lines again and again, each time from a different angle, her focus sharp and clinical. Li Ming Chen jotted down sharp notes about how I slurred my R sounds at the end of words, as if every syllable was on the run. She meticulously analyzed the shape my mouth pulled when I popped out each different vowel, with the cynicism of someone clocking in overtime. Li Ming measured the rhythm of my speech, breaking it up into fractions of seconds like a scientist obsessed with finding out why coffee never tastes right. She made me rattle off neighborhood names from Dublin I'd never even Googled, let alone visited. Li Ming lit up when I nailed the pronunciation, scribbling even more frantic notes as if she'd found a lost lottery ticket. She insisted my new accent was hardcore Southeast Dublin, not just a bargain bin Irish imitation. Li Ming bragged she could pinpoint my brogue to specific neighborhoods based on certain slurred sounds rolling off my tongue. My impulsive reaction was that I actually felt less like a nut job and more like a lab rat finally being handled logically, thanks to this clinical circus. I was relieved that somebody was finally treating this as a real medical mystery, foreign accent syndrome, instead of flinging the usual liar accusations. After all the recordings, Li Ming Chen parked herself in front of me to spell out what she'd found, acting like she was unveiling state secrets. She explained it wasn't just me parroting Irish sounds. My brain had apparently swallowed entire language habits, grammar rules and all. Li Ming laid out that my syntax and word choices would pass as native Southeast Dublin, complete with local slang. She then grilled me about any previous run-ins with Irish English before this linguistic circus started. Li Ming and I spent the next couple of days sifting through my entire past for any Irish breadcrumbs. I suddenly recalled that I'd been listening to RT radio podcasts during my chaotic commute for 5 years straight, for no real reason. I also used to binge Irish dramas on streaming services when sleep was a lost cause. Li Ming practically vibrated with excitement as she claimed my brain had been quietly hoarding all that Irish input, undetected. Her theory was that when the rumor about the hostile takeover dropped, my brain yanked up all that stashed Irish English at once, like a sandbag bursting in a flood. Li Ming Chen's explanation was that my brain has some janky backup language system that boots up whenever my main one blue screens. With my trademark cynical sass, I had to assert that her theory actually tracked better than all the other half-assed ideas the doctors had thrown out so far. Li Ming Chen then said she knew a person who could maybe help me actually work with this Irish brogue mess, rather than fighting it. She handed me the number for Marcus Lyle, a specialist who works with folks with FND cases and all their weird fallout. Marcus apparently used a freaky mix of speech homework and trauma meltdown management to tackle the accent situation. I called Marcus that same afternoon, and by some miracle, he had a slot open for the next week. I met Marcus, and he immediately dropped the bomb that trying to squash the accent would just make it dig in harder. Marcus compared battling the brogue to thrashing in quicksand. The more I freaked out, the deeper I'd sink. He made it clear that I needed to cooperate with my own brain's weird choices instead of fighting my instincts every waking minute. This whole hands-off approach was a total 180 from every speech therapy circuit I'd slogged through before. In my third session, I impulsively asked if Nathan could come in so Marcus could lay it out for him too. I called Nathan that night, only for him to flat out refuse to show up to any session. He declared he was absolutely done enabling what he branded my delusion. With biting irony, I had to admit his shutdown stung way more than when he'd pieced out of our apartment a few months back. This meant that Nathan would literally never believe any version of this mess, receipts or not. I finally saw there was no way our marriage could limp through this quicksand. My savings account was circling the drain without a job, and I seriously needed a plan. I hunted down an employment attorney online named Leah Santana, who was touted as a pro with discrimination train wrecks like mine. I sat across from Leah Santana, a hefty stack of my recent medical documentation between us, as she skimmed every page with the look of someone expecting to find a landmine under the stapled rosters. After a minute, Leah mentioned straight up that I could have a real wrongful termination case on my hands. She explained that foreign accent syndrome, FND, actually counted as a legit disability under federal regs, and my employer couldn't just kick me to the curb over medical weirdness. Leah started assembling the mountain of paperwork needed to drag my ex-company through the complaint process furnace. While Leah built my case, the bills roared in like a stampede, and I clocked that the mortgage was a sinking ship with only my sad wallet on duty. I was boxing up my life when Nathan swung by to haul off his share, the two of us reduced to mumbling over which utensils or old mugs belonged to whom after 12 years of not this. The real estate agent shoved a cringy for sale sign into our patchy lawn as I glared from the window, clocking nosy neighbors rubbernecking the spectacle. 3 weeks later, I scrawled my name on a lease for some shoebox one-bedroom apartment 40 minutes off-grid, cushioned by the best feature. Nobody there had heard of me or my sudden Irish brogue. The movers gutted the house, since Nathan staked his claim on the dining set and bedroom suite we'd both once thought looked grown up, and I didn't argue. I plopped down on the hardwood, the vacant house surrounding me, my thick Irish voice bouncing in the emptiness, sending my reality veering off into the uncanny. My new apartment was suffocatingly small, but at least the rent didn't require dark magic, given my savings were circling the drain. I shoved my ancient laptop onto a folding card table and jumped on job boards for gigs that wouldn't require video calls. Nobody needed to hear the weird. Unsurprisingly, almost every American company ghosted me, but then I started clocking the reactions from UK-based listings. A London startup founder shot me an email in hours, raving that my cover letter was bloody perfect for their desperately dull communication needs. During my phone screening, the founder straight up admitted my brogue actually played better with their British clients than the last couple of Yank freelancers. 2 more UK companies rolled in with positive responses that same week, and suddenly I had 3 promising gigs dangling in my inbox. Marcus Lyle suggested daily voice journals, so I found myself reading the same news paragraph every damn morning and night, trying to chart whatever weird shape my accent would take next. I attempted to spot patterns in my shifting Irish brogue by tracking how it morphed throughout the day or whenever my emotions flipped out. The recordings laid bare how my new accent slammed down hardest when I was tired or losing my temper, especially in the way those R's vanished like ghosts and my vowels went haywire. Marcus Lyle and I both figured out that phone calls dialed the brogue up to 11, but sometimes rereading old picture books from my childhood cranked my American bits back on for a hot second. My dad called me up, barking that I'd better drag myself to Sunday dinner, and when I explained I was drowning in specialist appointments, he griped that I needed to cut the crap and just talk the right way. I flat out told him he could either accept this mess was actually medical, or we'd skip the family circus till he bothered to clue up on FND. He got choked up and handed the phone over to my mom, who accused me of acting theatrical and breaking my father on purpose. I slammed the phone down and bombarded both my parents with links to legit medical journals about functional neurological disorder, all of which they ghosted. Dr. Tanya Singh made me grind through grueling tongue twister drills, forcing American R sounds into words until I felt like my mouth might explode from the effort. I managed a nearly passable car if I hyperfocused, wrangling my tongue into just the right spot, but it only lasted for a blink before my brain yanked me back to pure Irish. The effort drained me dry. I could keep up the act for about 3 words before the accent snapped back like a stretched out rubber band. Dr. Tanya Singh kept meticulous recordings and warned me not to get cocky, since with FND the odds of recovery were as unpredictable as weather in Sao Paulo, and leaning in too hard might actually blow things up worse. Marcus Lyle's band, Requested Reds, was finally on Spotify, and I dropped a link in the comments with a smirk. Leah Santana blasted off a formal complaint to my last workplace, attaching stacks of documentation from 5 separate experts proving the FND and breaking down their legal responsibilities for disability accommodation. 2 weeks later, the company's legal hound slithered back with an $8,000 hush offer, which Leah declared was an insult since I had flushed a 6-figure paycheck. Leah gathered proof of other FND cases where proper accommodations happened, then pieced together a killer counter proposal spelling out exactly how screwed the company would be if I sued. I burned through sleep, doom scrolling deep into forums until I dug up a support group just for FND and foreign accent syndrome weirdness. I was in awe as I read post after post from folks in the same hellhole, like a teacher who got stuck with a German accent for 12 years after a wreck. I and the other group members swapped wild tales about jobs torpedoed by absurd medical crap and relationships detonated thanks to this weirdness, but also tossed around real-world tips for tracking down doctors who actually listen and surviving the hellscape of insurance claims. One woman in the thread admitted she'd thrown in the towel on ever getting her old accent back, stubbornly flipping the script to rebuild her life inside whatever freak show her voice had turned into. Nathan finally consented to meet me at some grubby downtown coffee shop, where the two of us hashed out how to split our joint bank accounts and scrape together whatever sad assets were left. Oozing justification, I calmly unloaded the scientific dope on FND pulled from Li Ming Chen's research and watched Nathan's face twitch in genuine surprise as he coughed up that he's been silently doom-scrolling about it online too. Nathan admitted he totally gets, at least in his head, that FND isn't just a fairy tale, but he's stuck on the feeling that I basically chose to nuke our existence as a couple. We both agreed that mediation is less wallet annihilating than dueling it out with blood-sucking lawyers, especially since our shared funds have all but evaporated. Strung out after a week lost in legal red tape and endless insurance interrogations, I clocked something off with my typing. Words like color, realize, and even whilst popping out, Irish-flavored spelling and all, right under my nose. Li Ming Chen claimed that this creeping accent weirdness wasn't just skin deep, but had gone full IT dev, rewiring my language settings at the core. Li Ming documented my bizarre new writing quirks for research while I zoned out in front of my computer, half convinced I was going to permanently forget how to write like an American. Dr. Elias Rocha, ancient, legendary, stuck in the 1960s, rang up Leah Santana after I signed off on the paperwork letting him spill all my brain drama. Rocha pledged to type up an epic letter for my disability red tape, stuffing it with dusty case notes from decades ago about 3 other unlucky souls whose sudden accent shifts got jump-started by stress and just stuck around. Leah told me that this throwback documentation might finally be the smoking gun, proving nobody's just inventing a new syndrome. There's a 60-year stack of receipts backing me up. Fueled by adrenaline and spite, I spent the next week propping my phone on a kitchen tripod and spiral rambling into the void about FND for an exhausting 23 minutes. In my recording, I spelled out how your brain cooks up legit physical symptoms even when the scans are boring as oatmeal, and how stress can turn your nervous system into a DIY rewiring project from hell. I shoved printed out medical articles and Dr. Rauch's vintage letter at the camera, locking my voice into a mock calm register even if my hands were straight up quaking. I dropped the finished video to YouTube as an unlisted link, firing it off to my dad, my mom, my sister, and every cousin who's ever hissed behind my back that I was faking for the attention. My sister rang me 3 hours later, and before I even got a word out, I heard her sobbing down the line. My sister kept apologizing and admitted she'd honestly never realized weird conditions like foreign accent syndrome could even happen without something gory showing up on a brain scan. Dad watched it all unfold in the group chat, but he didn't call or text for 2 whole days. When he finally did, all he said was, maybe we could do Sunday dinner again, with the warning that it's only fair if people still have questions. 3 full months had gone by since I'd started one-on-one sessions with Marcus Lyle, doing tedious muscle memory drills, reading nursery rhymes and cheesy childhood songs on loop, praying it'd snap my speech back. At one session, I was halfway through Mary Had a Little Lamb when, out of nowhere, the word little landed in my old plain American accent for one blazing instant before the Irish brogue came roaring back. Marcus's eyes nearly fell out of his head. He grabbed my arm and made me repeat little 40 times rapid fire, coaxing out an American lilt maybe 1 out of every 10 tries, but always inside that exact phrase. We cycled through every kid's song, Twinkle Twinkle, even stuttered through Happy Birthday, and sometimes a bit would sound American, but pushing my brain like that left me wiped out and with a headache throbbing behind my eyes from wrangling all those misfiring pathways. That same week, Leah Santana called up with news. My old company got scared enough to raise their settlement offer to $32,000 after she sent them actual proof of 3 other FND cases where the workers kept their jobs with full accommodation. It wasn't anywhere close to my ruined 6-figure paycheck, but that money meant I could keep my tiny apartment and not panic about building up freelance gigs just to dodge eviction. Leah told me I could dig in for a bigger payout, but it'd drag on for years, and FND is so misunderstood, there's no guarantee a judge would ever side with me. I signed the papers in Leah's office, cheered on by her, while she pointed out that my old company was also promising a neutral reference with no mention of the accent mess at all. 2 weeks later, I just showed up at Dad's for Sunday dinner without waiting for approval, walked into the dining room, and felt a total hush settle the second they all clocked the Irish in my voice. I spread out Li-Ming Chen's research on the table and explained FND in cool, even tones, passing files around while Aunt Francesca audibly rolled her eyes the whole time. Suddenly, my 7-year-old niece broke the tension. She asked if I was a real-life leprechaun now and if I could grant wishes, which got everyone awkward laughing but not really relaxing. Cousins started whispering, Uncle Carlos shot daggers like I was contagious. But Beth, bless her, straight up asked decent questions and actually seemed ready to listen. Nathan shocked everyone by agreeing to sit down with Marcus Lyle for a solo session. He came out 90 minutes later pale and puffy-faced, looking like he'd lost a wrestling match with his own emotions. He found me waiting, plunked down beside me, and, without even looking up, told me with a shaky voice he finally believed me, but that didn't change a single thing between us. Nathan said seeing my whole personality tilt sideways overnight, even if it's medical, was just too much, and he couldn't stay married to someone who now felt like a stranger, however little it was my fault. I nodded and wiped my eyes, feeling Nathan's hand shaky in mine while we both sat crying in that bland, soul-sucking waiting room, and everyone else pretended they weren't hanging on every word. My phone buzzed. An email from that Irish tech startup I'd been hustling for, offering a full-time remote job with benefits as soon as my trial ended. The next video call, they hit me with the truth. I wasn't just a regular hire. I was their secret weapon for landing government contracts that needed US-born reps. And they even winked that I sounded more Irish than half the Dublin staff. Someone literally said that. The pay? Pretty weak compared to what I lost, but steady income plus health coverage felt like somebody had thrown me a rescue rope. Li-Ming Chen hit me up after digging into our chat logs, catching how I was unconsciously flipping from American grammar to Irish quirks mid-sentence, like my brain didn't even notice. I'd drop clunky lines like I have got instead of I have gotten, and then randomly throw whilst into a pile of regular American chatter, which made my autocorrect bug out. Li-Ming made me drill grammar exercises, but she didn't sugarcoat it. Total accent recovery probably wasn't happening, so I'd better start getting used to being forever a little strange. At mindfulness appointments with Marcus Lyle, we'd sit in that tiny office with the white noise machine hissing, and he'd push me to figure out who I was now with no accent, no job, no American identity as my armor. Every layer of what I'd built, job, relationship, the whole normal American thing, was just gone, and I was staring at a massive blank space. Marcus nudged that maybe this forced reboot would take me somewhere better, if I could quit wrestling my new reality into submission and just start building something different. When the settlement check finally landed, the mail carrier handed it to me, and I wiped out every maxed out credit card, paid 3 months of late rent, and stashed what was left in my tiny apocalypse fund. Leah Santana landed the neutral reference gig. Any future boss would see just a medical departure. Never a word about the accent circus in the fine print. 6 months since I got stamped with foreign accent syndrome, and finally, I'd stopped chasing every miracle cure or Reddit rando promising an accent reset shortcut. Marcus said this whole acceptance mindset was actually step 1. All the frantic fix-it hustle was just supercharging the FND and keeping me trapped, swirling even deeper. 3 weeks later, my dad called while I was burning scrambled eggs in my shoebox kitchen. He quietly confessed he'd binged every FND documentary he could find and buried himself in medical texts online. He finally admitted he understood this was a legit condition, and he straight up apologized for blowing me off so long. He asked if I'd come to Sunday dinner, but I said we had to hammer out some ground rules beforehand. I agreed, but only if nobody dragged up my fake Irish accent or nudged me to just talk normal for a bit. He promised, and even said he'd laid down the law with everyone. Either treat me properly or get the hell out. Sunday rolled around and the whole vibe was off, sitting at that same battered table with my thick Irish brogue hogging all the oxygen. My niece couldn't resist, tossing random words my way just to giggle at how I pronounced them, but at least she wasn't being a little shit about it. I walked into the mediator's office, the place reeking of burnt coffee and copier toner, for the sit-down where Nathan and I would carve up the separation deal. Nathan rolled in with every last receipt and statement stacked in a color-coded binder. What else is new? Organization king. We ran through bank balances, tapped on retirement funds, and split up the equity from the house we'd already sold. I'll give him this. Nathan never pulled a fast one, never hinted I was faking my entire bizarre condition to grab more cash out of the deal. We both started crying when we signed the paperwork, but I could feel the weird relief hiding under all the misery. Our mediator piped up and said we were crushing it compared to most train wreck couples she had to referee. I tracked down an FND support group online, and they needed volunteers to share their mess so others didn't flounder like I did. Dr. Tanya Singh, the speech pathologist who'd unearthed those freaky 1960s cases, hopped on as an advisor for the group. We all set to work, pumping out pamphlets and cobbling together websites packed with info that would have spared me months of clueless hell. I got into blogging, typing up my FND saga, and even filmed a couple of gritty videos laying out what it's like inside this medical mess. Other FND folks slid into my DMs, admitting my story was pure oxygen. It helped them not feel like total disasters. When my new company, Sakura Imports, fired up the first team video call, my nerves were gnawing at me. Since now my face and my accent were about to meet my new coworkers face to face, the moment my face popped up on the call, the rest of the crew burst out laughing, teasing that I now sounded classier than the queen herself, eliciting an extra touch of side-eye cynicism from me. The guy from Manchester cracked that I was rocking a thicker Irish brogue than anyone in their entire Belfast division. Nobody gave a damn about my bizarre medical history or why I suddenly talk like a Dublin grandpa. Their only concern was whether I'd pull my weight and get stuff done on deadline. Li Ming Chen shot over a screenshot of her linguistics journal article, showcasing the full scientific autopsy on my foreign accent syndrome. Li Ming kept my real name off the record, but splashed all the juicy bits about my grammar flip-flops and off-brand slang all over the study. She insisted my wild case is now fueling research into the bugged-out ways the brain juggles different language codes, even when the hardware looks mint. My knee-jerk reaction to reading my life rendered clinical and weird was strange, though I admit at least someone's wringing value out of this personal train wreck. The moving truck practically got stuck squeezing down the stupidly narrow street to my supposed new beginning of an apartment. Even though the place is a shoebox compared to the last hole, the perk is it's in a nicer area. Suddenly, I'm walking distance from real Pone de Queijo and espresso instead of gas station sludge. I felt a weird relief hearing my thick Irish twang bounce off anonymous walls that never knew my old accent anyway. I tacked pictures up, fiddled with my broken IKEA shelf, and lined everything up in a doomed attempt to bully this tiny apartment into feeling like home. My dad rang up while I was elbow deep in boxes in my new low-rent kitchen, stalling forever before he finally spat out an apology for choosing sides with my mom. My dad confessed he figured I'd totally lost it mentally, but could tell now I was actually steady and still pulling a paycheck, weird voice or not. My dad floated the idea of resetting gradually, maybe catching up over coffee every once in a while to see if the damage can heal. I gave a firm, unapologetic reply agreeing to the truce, but making it clear this Irish brogue isn't leaving the premises, so everyone better get used to it. During my session with Marcus Lyle, he pointed out something I'd missed about myself. I had stopped apologizing for my thick Irish brogue every time I talked to someone new. Marcus observed the shame was fading, even though the accent wasn't going anywhere. Marcus called this process integration, not recovery, clarifying it means owning this part of myself. My sister texted to ask if I wanted to meet her friend who's dealing with chronic fatigue syndrome. My sister thought we might click since both of us deal with invisible illnesses nobody believes. We met up at a quiet coffee shop, where we both immediately connected over doctors doubting our reality. She shared years of being dismissed as lazy or moody when she was genuinely sick. We swapped numbers, launching into nonstop texts about the ridiculous crap people say. It felt incredible to have someone who instantly gets the vibe of medical gaslighting. Zero need for backstory. The divorce papers showed up by certified mail 6 months after Nathan and I had inked the separation agreement. The waiting period was finally up. Our marriage was officially in the trash. Nathan had attached a handwritten note on his own stationery. He said he was sorry for not believing me sooner and wished me legit happiness. He clarified that he's been seeing a therapist who's helped him figure out all his anger. I wrote back, wishing him well, and for once, actually meant it. The accent that wrecked my whole old life was quietly turning into just another quirk of my weird new one. I sat in Dr. Marquez's office as he typed chronic FND with linguistic features into my medical file, making it sound both bureaucratic and almost like a backhanded compliment. Dr. Marquez printed out the diagnosis and handed it to me with the energy of someone awarding a not-so-coveted trophy. The insurance company, shockingly, actually accepted the new medical label and started covering Marcus Lyle's therapy sessions for me, saving me a minor fortune each month. My UK-based company rang me up the following week to tell me they were planning to make me their team lead, saying Irish clients trust my brogue more than their actual Irish employees, which I greeted with my signature ironic twist. My American team members insisted I was easier to understand than the Dublin office, a claim that made absolutely zero sense, but I wasn't about to turn down the extra cash. Christmas approached, and my dad, who hadn't invited me in ages, finally asked me to dinner, a fact I noted with a touch of my trademark sarcasm. The awkwardness at the table was thick, with nobody mentioning my accent, except my niece, who slid her Harry Potter book over and begged me to read it in my cool Irish voice. My mom passed the potatoes my way without so much as a side eye, and while my dad still wouldn't look me in the face, at least he was physically there. The FND support group still met every Tuesday at the shabby community center, and that's how I crossed paths with another Leah Santana, who used a wheelchair when her legs randomly betrayed her. Leah and I started grabbing coffee after every support meeting, with her never bothering to ask about my brogue, and me never probing about her legs, making our mutual silence feel like a small act of rebellion. Leah simply gets what it's like to be the target of stares for reasons that make as much sense as government paperwork. Marcus Lyle announced that my therapy sessions could now drop to once a month, since I'd stopped fighting like a maniac to restore my old voice, and was mostly holding it together. Marcus's verdict was that I'd managed to integrate the Irish brogue into my identity, cynical as that sounds, which he claimed was basically a win in the world of FND. I got a call from Li Ming Chen, excitedly telling me that her research paper about my case just snagged some major linguistics prize, and she she asked if I'd show up to the award shindig. I sat in a generic hotel ballroom while Leeming broke down my bizarre grammar for 200 linguists who took notes like I was the Mona Lisa of weird language. Leah and I signed the lease on a 2-bedroom apartment with doorways wide enough for her wheelchair and internet fast enough for both of our remote gigs, sharing an ironic laugh about it. We dubbed ourselves the neurologically interesting couple and cackled about it as we cooked dinner together in our new place. Dr. Elias Roche's daughter contacted me 8 months later to tell me he'd passed away and mentioned finding a box of his old notebooks up in the attic. A week later, a heavy package arrived. 3 battered leather journals, pages crammed with dense handwriting, every note focused on those 1960s patients who'd, just like me, woken up with thick Irish brogues out of nowhere. Flipping through story after story felt like I was stumbling onto the secret lineage, some strange family of accent castaways I never knew I had, even though every one of them was long lost to time. I stacked pillows on my desk, propped my phone up, and hit record, reciting the exact same text I'd obsessed over for 2 relentless years, voice steady and weirdly rehearsed. I played the audio back and caught slivers of my American vowels breaking through, but mostly that County Cork accent blared out, strong as ever. Leeming Chen, with her usual straight talk, told me that slipping accents like that was normal for someone in my shoes, and wishing for a full rewind was wishful thinking, just not happening. Not long after my company called, they needed someone to head to Dublin on a new contract stacked with government red tape, and since I already sounded like the locals, my name shot to the top of the list. When the plane touched down at Dublin Airport, I stepped out and everything tilted. My voice finally synced up with the humid, accented swirl all around me. Wandering old cobblestone lanes, I kept hearing echoes of my own voice in the pub chatter, from cab drivers everywhere, like the whole city was running some warped, half-familiar homecoming parade. On day 1, the clients took one listen and pegged me as Irish, until I casually mentioned being from Ohio, and everyone stared like I'd just pulled a rabbit out of my briefcase. Back at my hotel, staring out at the River Liffey, I perched on the window ledge and quietly mumbled to myself, letting my Irish voice melt into the nighttime thrum below. Leah texted asking about the trip, so I sent her a video of me, full brogue, ordering a greasy sack of chips from a bustling curbside stand. The vendor barely clocked my accent, just grinned and handed over my food, making me laugh. This was the most normal I'd felt in years. The flight home dumped me straight back into oddball territory, but at least I still had a steady job, Leah in my corner, and a ragged version of something that looked like a stable life. At JFK, the customs agent waved me through, all smiles, convinced I was straight out of Dublin, and I nodded, letting them believe it, because unraveling the real story would be a mess I wasn't about to start. Leah scooped me up curbside in her tricked-out sedan. We drove home together, weaving through city traffic toward our apartment and those infamously chunky doorways. While I'd been halfway across the world, Leah had gone decorating crazy, filling the place with snapshots from every type of FND support group meetup or picnic, every photo anchoring this new, upside-down version of my life. I recalled how the sudden thick Irish brogue that blew up my marriage and got me canned from my job somehow wound up paving the road to a life I'd never even daydreamed about. Leeming Chen mailed me the published journal with my case study, and I admit that seeing my whole situation laid out in academic speak almost made me believe I wasn't losing my mind after all. Dr. Marquez's official diagnosis let me qualify for workplace disability accommodations, even though my new boss couldn't have cared less about them. My dad started checking in with me more these days, even if he still sometimes tripped up and asked if I was back to normal before correcting himself. My mom had taken to introducing me to her friends as her daughter, with that accent medical deal, which, compared to her calling me a liar, actually felt like a win. Leah's random paralysis spells chilled out when she stressed less, while my accent locked in as long as I wasn't battling it. We figured out how to look out for each other in a way regular neurotypicals just wouldn't get. The promotion let me finally swing for legit health insurance that would actually cover new FND treatments as doctors dreamed them up. Researchers kept bugging Leeming, wanting to poke at my case, and she always kicked their requests over to me to see if I cared. A Johns Hopkins researcher tried to lure me out for a week of brain scans, but I blew him off because my work backlog was a looming threat. My dad rang the next weekend, wanting me to dumb down FND again so he could give the right answer at his poker night, since his crew wouldn't drop the Irish thing chatter. I sent him a video I'd made that explained all the weird medical details, and he binged it 3 times before calling back, swearing he finally got that I wasn't faking sick or out of my mind. He started blasting FND articles across the family group chat and was quick to clap back at anyone snarking that it was made up or all in my head. Having him defend me at reunions instead of acting sorry for me totally rewired our bond. I made up my mind to write out my story for Medium since the support group was always ranting there were 0 real FND first-person tales online. Writing that piece took me a gritty 2 weeks, since I ripped up every other sentence second-guessing myself, but Leeming swooped in to help me slice it down to the raw facts. In less than 3 days, my post racked up 20,000 views, and my inbox became a dumping ground for messages from folks who'd been fighting mysterious symptoms for years without realizing foreign accent syndrome, FND, was even a thing. One woman from Montreal shared that my article finally gave her the guts to demand real medical testing after 5 doctors blew off her thick Irish brogue as some kind of sideshow act. A Texan guy explained he'd shown the post to his wife, who at long last quit blaming him for faking his sudden Cork accent. The comments turned into an impromptu group chat, with people shotgunning resource links and suggesting doctors faster than anyone could say diagnosis. I was presenting to government clients via video when I suddenly realized midway that, for once, I wasn't obsessing over my damn accent even a little. My speech flowed out, all pure Irish lilt, while I hammered away at slides about procurement projections. My coworkers ignored the accent entirely now, and the interns all assumed I must have transferred from the Dublin office. The mental grind of fighting my own mouth for 2 years finally quit sucking my soul dry. Leah and I had been a couple for 18 months when she proposed swinging by the FND group where we'd first locked eyes to mark our anniversary. Everyone at the meeting remembered us from those loud, messy days when we both were floundering, desperate to not be defined by our weird symptoms. Leah stood up halfway through, announced we had news, before dropping to one knee in the stubborn old rec center. Leah whipped out a ring and grinned, saying marrying me would be the nerviest thing her own scrambled neurons ever pulled off. The whole group popped off in cheers, someone's golden retriever yapping like mad, and that guy with the tremors straight up weeping with joy. I saw people in wheelchairs, with canes, tics, and random tremors, girls, celebrating like family, because they got that love has zero patience for able-bodied bullshit. 3 years after the morning Nathan laughed at my breakfast rant and my universe imploded, I was still standing. Now I had a killer work-from-home gig that paid better than the office one, and a fiancé who knew chronic illness hell from the inside out. Our apartment was rigged with grab bars in the bathroom and a self-installed wheelchair ramp, and honestly, neither of us cared that it wasn't normal. The thick Irish brogue that smashed my first marriage wide open somehow ended up steering me into a life I'd never have pictured, a fact I note with a trademark cynical shrug. Dr. Tanya Singh, the speech pathologist who once hustled me to meet Dr. Elias Rocha, checks in every few months and somehow morphed into an actual friend despite my reservations. She claims my bizarre case upended the way she studies FND, and she even published 3 research papers based on my data, which I admit with a bit of ironic pride. Whenever she's in town, we grab tea together, and she always cracks up when I, of course, order Barry's tea because it fits the new me. Just once, she dragged along her latest research assistant who ogled me like I was the Madonna of medical freaks, which honestly felt strange but also kind of satisfying. Our wedding was at the Hit or Miss Community Center where our paths first crossed, because Leah wanted the whole FND tribe there for backup. I stood awkwardly at the makeshift altar in a barely passable suit rental, listening to my own accented words bounce off the walls as I promised Leah real love through every language shift and remission bazinga. My parents were parked right up front, finally surrendering to the fact that this is my existence, with my dad cracking a smile when I mispronounced mirror with my full Irish gusto during the ceremony. Leah's sister ran the show from her wheelchair and managed to stay mostly composed until she hit the ring exchange and the waterworks absolutely let loose. The rowdy crowd of my workmates clashed with support group weirdos, everybody flailing on the dance floor to hopelessly cringy tunes, and somehow it was just perfect. Looking back, I can see how those 4 words scrawled in that battered old notebook gave me explicit permission to quit fighting a losing battle with myself. Functional neurological disorder syndrome unlocked the reason my brain burrowed into an Irish brogue during the pressure cooker days of that hostile takeover rumor disaster. The anxious American self, the one fixated on impressing clients and flawless PowerPoints, is toast, but the version that clawed its way out talks straight about surviving change with real scars. My Cork accent doesn't register as a disorder anymore. It's just me, plain and unvarnished, telling my own story. What a wild ride to dump in my lap. Kind of flips your worldview upside down, huh? Thanks for sticking around, and remind me to like this because seriously, it helps way more than you'd think.